Kelsey Feigner has owned hermit crabs for 5 years, rescuing her first 3 in 2015. Things snowballed quickly from there, and she got to attempt raising Zoe in 2019, getting 1 to land, but not through the first molt. She's hoping to have another chance sometime soon. Kelsey has been avid about animal care since she was young, becoming even more so when she got her first hedgehog in 2018. She has a BS in fisheries and wildlife and a background in wildlife rehabilitation. For her day job, she works at the University of Kansas Medical Center caring for research rodents. At home, she currently has 16 hermit crabs, in addition to a house full of other animals: 2 dogs, 2 cats, 2 hedgehogs, 6 rats, a ball python, a lesser tenrec, and a dwarf hamster. Finding new ways to enrich her animals' lives is a favorite passion of hers, and she's thrilled to be able to talk about enrichment for hermit crabs for CrabCon 2020. And we are thrilled to have her. Please welcome Kelsey Feigner.
Hello, and welcome to Tips and Techniques for Hermit Crab Enrichment, presented by Kelsey Feigner. So first of all, what is enrichment? Enrichment means providing stimulus to allow animals to display natural species-specific behaviors with the goal of improving mental and physical health in captivity. This can include lots of things, like giving predators a prey dummy to retrieve food from, like this lion with a zebra-painted fake dummy. Why even bother doing this? All animals benefit from enrichment, and that includes everything from mammals to reptiles and even invertebrates like hermit crabs. Enrichment reduces bad stress for animals, gives them something to do, and reduces boredom, and this makes animals healthier and stronger. It also increases good stress, which makes your animals more resilient and more capable of dealing with change. Providing enrichment also teaches kids about animal intelligence and welfare, which is really useful for those who have hermit crabs in their classrooms. And honestly, it's just fun. We like to watch our animals enjoy themselves. We like to watch them do things, so it's fun to give them new things to interact with in their enclosures. There are 5 main types of enrichment. Social means stuff like same species of crab, different species of crab, different types of animals, and even exposure to humans. Cognitive means training, puzzle toys or feeders, and offering novel items of stimulation, so giving them different items to explore or manipulate. Physical habitat enrichment includes substrate, climate, including temperature and humidity, nests and hiding places, and climbing and base structures that you have set up in the enclosure. Sensory enrichment, which includes auditory, visual, scent and taste, and tactile, or being able to touch it. And food enrichment, which includes different presentations and different types of food. I do have good news. Standard care recommendations already cover a lot of areas in hermit crab enrichment. For social enrichment, we recommend keeping multiple crabs and also keeping species buddy due to behavioral differences between different species of hermit crabs. For cognitive enrichment, there isn't a lot that is already part of basic care, but a lot of people do offer novel items for hermit crabs to interact with. So for physical habitat enrichment, we already do a lot with our basic care. We already recommend natural and deep substrate, containers with different substrates like moss, temperature and humidity variance, hiding places, climbing structures, variety of free shells, fresh and saltwater pools, a 12-hour on, 12-hour off flight schedule, and baked plants for permeable cover, or cover that they can move around without being seen. So we get a gold star for physical habitat enrichment. Here is an example of one of my 10-gallon hermit crab tanks. So on the left you can see there's both of the water pools. There is a structure in the middle for food, and they can climb up to the food. They can also hide underneath it. There's free shells scattered around. Over in the right upper corner there's another plant. They can move around out of sight here and there. There is a raised basket that has moss in it, which is damp, so that provides a higher humidity area to hide in if they would like. There are also different kinds of hides that you can offer, such as plant pots, coconuts. Coconuts tend to be very popular with hermit crabs, and they can also double as climbing structures, as hermit crabs will climb on anything. There are also shell shops that you can use to offer lots of shells without having them get buried. You can see there's a pool right there next to the little crab in my picture. And in the other picture on the right, you can see 2 hermit crabs in my foraging dish. And I had a couple different plants that overhung the dish, which allowed them to eat under cover and feel more comfortable. And here is a picture of one of my hermit crabs dug under the substrate all the way at the bottom, which was about 12 inches of substrate, so they really do use a lot of that depth, especially when they're going down to molts. So for sensory enrichment, some people set their tanks up in active areas, which gives the hermit crabs more motion and activity to watch and be aware of. And it is well recommended to do lots of different types of food. So a lot of us had pantries that look like mine, where I had 2 shelves full of different containers with supplements and different types of food, some larger food items that I gave occasionally. On the bottom was a lot of extra stuff and a lot of wild foods like leaves and flowers and stuff like that. And here's another picture with a spread of food that I had for my crabs. So there's a little green kidney dish with some different dried foods. There's a rectangle green silicone dish that has a number of different dried foods. I tend to do lots of different proteins, veggies, and fruits, and then a few other extra things. And I had some supplement dishes, which included green sand, worm castings with calcium, and a foraging dish which would have mixes of leaves, flowers, bark, other stuff like that for them to pick through. So for sensory enrichment, we also tend to include lots of different natural materials to interact with, such as different types of wood. I have a crab sitting on a mopani wood log here. Bark, you can just see some crab legs sticking out from a coconut or a cork bark log, hollow log, and a crab sitting in a moss container, and 3 crabs, I think, at least, all crammed into a coconut with one looking out at you. And we also tend to provide coconut fiber for like mats and stuff to climb on. So for food enrichment, as I've mentioned, we recommend a wide variety of foods with lots of different food groups. These 2 pictures show how I organized a lot of my food collection. It is a bamboo drink lid dispenser which rotates on its base, and I had 4 sections in it. 1 section for protein, 1 for veggies, 1 for fruit, and 1 for other things such as bee pollen, seed mix, stuff like that. And here's a picture of 3 of my hermit crabs sitting on their dry food dish. So you can see there's lots of different food options there, something different in each little section. and all 3 of the crabs are checking out a different food. So they really do appreciate having different options to try and the ability to choose what they want or need to eat at a given time. We also tend to offer different textures of food, such as dry, fresh, or cooked food. Dry picture, you can see I've got a whole bunch of different freeze-dried proteins that I bought for my hermit crabs. For fresh picture, there's 3 hermit crabs checking out a fresh green salad with some flower petals that I made for them. And the cooked picture has a hermit crab eating from a section of cooked hermit corn cob. And we also offer different presentations, like whole pieces or powdered, like a hermit crab eating a large section of coconut, fresh coconut, still in the shell. And I have a couple of little dishes that had some chopped up broccoli, carrot, green pepper, coconut, and some thawed cooked seafood. And then I have some different dried foods that I made laid out on a counter, where there are some sliced things that are in baggies, which I think includes squash and cucumber and apples. And then I have a few containers at the bottom, which includes some stuff that is powdered, so different types of presentation. So with all that we already do for enrichment, what else can we do? What can we still improve on, and what else can we offer them? For social enrichment, some extra things that we can do is offer mirrors in the hermit crab tank. This could be especially useful for quarantined or isolated crabs due to illness or injury, so that they have a chance to see another crab while they are isolated. We can also do gentle, slow acclimation to humans, which is not majorly recommended, and definitely wouldn't be a good idea for beginner owners, but it is possible to do, and there are people that have friendlier crabs that are more interested in what they're doing when they get into the tank. So you would just want to go slowly, make sure you watch for signs of stress, and keep within safe temperature and humidity ranges. So as you can see with the second picture here, the person has their hermit crab on their hand and still inside the tank, so it's still be able to breathe humid air. For cognitive enrichment, we can do puzzle feeders, which might sound a little bit strange with hermit crabs, but they can be really simple sometimes. Really, puzzle feeders are just items that require manipulation in order to retrieve food. So you can do something that's handmade, like this is one that I made, or you can do a store-bought one from Xenovita Curiosities, Dan Comas, and they have these little curiosity cubes that you can place some food into, and the hermit crabs have to go through the small openings to get at it. And for cognitive, you can also just keep things fresh. Add in new items periodically, such as different types of wood, maybe some different small items that they can interact with or move. You can offer new foods when possible, and change the food locations up so they have to look around a little bit more. And you can swap out small decorations, like different hides, new climbing items, or different cover types. You do want to make sure it's small items, not major ones, unless you have any hermit crabs that are, unless all of your hermit crabs are above ground. So for physical habitat enrichment, you can, again, vary location and types of hides and items, right? Dual category enrichment. They don't all just stick to one category. You can also create safe range temperature and humidity variant retreats. So things like a damp moss hide, or you can put a hide back by the heating mat so it stays a little bit warmer. You can have a hide towards the front of the tank, which is going to stay cooler. That way they get a choice of where they would like to be and still be out of sight. You can also offer small containers of different substrate, like something of just coconut fiber. You can do small rocks that are different types of moss, stuff like that. You can also rotate your spare shells rather than offering all of your extra shells all the time. So just offer a small selection of them and then say once a week, switch out which ones you have in there so they get something new to look at. So for physical habitat enrichment, one thing that has gotten very popular recently has been giving your hermit crabs wheels. You can do upright wheels like this green one, or you can do a horizontal flying saucer wheel, like the yellow one on the right. And for sensory enrichment, you can also place stickers, cling film, aquarium backgrounds, like this example, or draw on the tank walls with dry erase marker all on the outside of the tank. And this may not produce much effect with the hermit crabs, they may not pay any attention to it, but it's still technically a change to the environment, and it could be a fun thing for kids to do, so it is still technically an option. And again, you can provide a mirror so they have something they can kind of look at. And also for sensory enrichment, you can do UVB lighting. Now, this is something that is not required for nutritional health, and that has been a subject of debate a little bit in some of the groups, but there is no scientific evidence or reason that hermit crabs would require this in order to metabolize calcium, like some other animals, like reptiles. But there are other crustaceans that can see UVB light, and there's no studies on hermit crabs specifically, but there is a lot of other ones. So there's a possibility that UVB light could provide additional depth to their vision, and since it is a part of their natural habitat, that is an option to add into their enclosure. If you're going to add UVB lighting, you want to make sure you do your research. Linear bulbs, the ones that are long and thin tubes, are safer than compact coil bulbs. Make sure you are cautious about the strength of the light and don't get one that's too strong because that could possibly burn them. And you want to allow for plenty of retreats in areas away from exposure so they have the ability to get away if they are being harmed by it. And it's also important to keep in mind that UVB is useless through glass and is largely ineffective through most meshes. So you want to make sure that there's nothing between the UVB light and your hermit crabs if you want this to actually be useful for them. And UVB light bulbs are also limited in duration. They do not produce useful UVB light after about 6 months, depending on the brand of bulb, even though they'll still give off visual light. So if you are intending to give them UVB, you want to make sure you're able to keep up on changing it, and that can get a little more expensive, so something to keep in mind. So for sensory enrichment and improving it, consider the textures that you use in your tank already and include some varieties, such as different woods, stones, types of hides, materials for hiding in. You can use different things like cocoa fiber, moss, or dry leaves. Here is a couple of pictures from my tank, which shows some rock climbing walls, a cholla wood climbing wall, coconut mat flooring, and the other picture shows again some coconut fiber mats to climb, cork barks sections, and I also have some bridges, some sisal rope climbers, stuff like that. So there's a bunch of different textures there for them to interact with. You can also include items that move in novel ways, like seesaws, swinging bridges, hammocks, swings, hoops. I have this one hoop kind of hung up near my pool, and then I have a little ladder made of free attached hoops that kind of swing around a little bit more, so it gives them a different motion if they climb them. And you can also do like free hanging ropes, stuff like that, so they're going to move differently when the hermit crabs climb on them. You can also place natural scent items in the tank, things like feathers, shed reptile skin, herbivore poop, hooves, horns, antlers, skulls, dried chicken feet, rabbit ears, stuff like that. Here's a picture of my foraging dish, which includes some snake shed and a couple of bags of moose poop that I bought, and they love to eat it, which is a little bit weird, but they do get some nutrition from it. There's a lot of plant matter that passes through, only partially digested, so being scavengers, it makes sense. And you can also get them strong smelling safe herbs and foods. Seafood is a really good one for that, because we all know seafood can smell quite strongly. So for food enrichment, this is one of my favorite categories. And I know that a variety is already recommended for good health, but there is a lot of things that we can do still. You, again, can switch up presentations, so we can then tend to get a bit complacent in how we offer foods. So if you usually offer dry, try doing some fresh or cooked food for your hermit crabs once a week or so, just for a little bit something different. If something that you usually give them seems difficult to pinch, or they don't seem very interested in it, you can try grinding it with the coffee grinder and see if they get more interested in it or have an easier time eating it. You can also offer large items like a large chunk of corn on the cob, like my earlier picture. You can offer meat that's still on a bone so that they have to scrape it off the bone. You can also give whole prey items, which is not for everybody, but you can find frozen thawed pinky mice and rats at pet stores sometimes, or online as feeder animals for snakes and other reptiles, and also things like baby quail, chicken chicks, stuff like that. And again, not for everybody, but the crabs usually really like stuff like that, so it can be interesting watching them go after it. You can also look at other animal communities for ideas on giving food. A lot of research on different enrichment for all kinds of animals. So some ideas on giving food that are from the parrot community include what's called bird bread. So you use a fairly simple animal-safe bread mix, and you can add in a lot of different things like dried veggies, fruits, nuts, stuff like that, and you can different seeds, whatever you want, and then it gives them a whole bunch of stuff that they can kind of pick through, and it's also healthy at the same time. It's also very common to do kind of stuffed leafy greens. You can make crab sushi by rolling seafood in leafy greens, and you can put a toothpick through it or use some twine to tie it off if you need to, and that way they have to kind of rip at the greens to get to the smelly food that they know is there. Makes it a little more interesting for them. You can also do something called grain bakes, kind of a casserole thing, where you mix multiple types of grains like quinoa, amaranth, grain mixes, lentils, all kinds of things with fruit and veggies, and then you cover the whole thing with water and you bake it until the water is all absorbed. And then you can do different scoops of it and freeze it and give it to them once in a while. And it's an easy way to do a wide variety of different grains or other foods and have it be kind of an easy one-time preparation, and then you have some cooked food for them for a while. And if you want some other examples on stuff you can put in, try Googling Parrot Nation. That is where I got the idea from. Another food idea is getting stainless steel hanging kebab, which you can also buy from Parrot Supplies, and you can make food kebabs with these by cutting up chunks of fruit or veggie or seafood or whatever, and putting them through the kebab, and then you can hang it in your tank, and they have to kind of climb up to it, climb on it, and pinch off what they want to eat. You can also do baked crab cookies, similar to baked dog treats. Those have gotten pretty popular in a lot of hermit crab groups and from a lot of food shops as well. And here's a picture that was given to me from one of the group members of her hermit crab eating a cookie that she made. And you can also, there are gel foods that are sold for reptiles and fish and stuff like that, but they tend to have a lot of ingredients, including some that aren't safe or recommended for hermit crabs. So you can do your own homemade gel food if you're interested, and you can use agar-agar powder to make it gel. And I did this one time and made some spirulina jellies for my hermit crabs that they were somewhat interested in. I want to try experimenting with this some more myself and see if I can find some mixes that they like a lot. Like I said before, you can also vary the food location in the tank. So if you normally put it in one spot, maybe try moving it around the tank a little bit more so they have to go looking for it. You can go on the ground. If you have raised platforms or second shelves, you can put it up a little bit more. As I said in the last slide, hanging kebabs. You can do wall-mounted baskets or bowls and put food in there so they have to climb up to it. Here's a couple pictures that I have from my tank where I put some millet up in a climbing mat on the wall. And here's a picture of a kebab base that I have to make one of those with. And of course you can do foraging. There's a lot of different options for this. So one that I do as a regular option in my tank is mixing wild foods like leaves, flowers, seeds, barks, twigs, all kinds of stuff together in one foraging dish, and so the crabs have to pick through it to find what it is they would like to eat. And the seeds or dried insects tend to be very popular, so they kind of have to ruffle through the leaf mix in order to find the tasty stuff that they want. And here's a picture of one of my crabs sitting in their foraging dish. And you can also plant sprouts or wheatgrass and then scatter dried insect seeds, stuff like that, in it so that they have to kind of pick through the grass to find the food. You can also, same idea, use fake plant mats from craft stores and scatter food in them, like that. And something I haven't tried before, but you could do water foraging with a small separate dish of safe water, with fresh veggies, fruit, or seafood to fish out. The main thing was you'd want to be careful to make sure they can't dump the water, so something with a very wide base probably, or that is quite heavy, and keep a close eye on it so that they don't dig a hole under it and dump the water out. But that's really popular for rats and rodents, so it's something I would like to try with my hermit crabs. So, where on earth do you find all this stuff? There's a lot of different places. Really popular idea is dollar stores. You can get shelving, plant pots and planters, fake flowers, get window vinyls, especially seasonal ones, plastic baskets, and stuff like that you can find for pretty cheap at dollar stores, so those can be a good place to check. At pet stores, you can check out the reptile, small animals, fish and bird supply aisles, and don't forget to check dog and cat treats as well. You can get all kinds of cage decoration, hides, coconut fiber mats, moss, and then you can also get seeds, dried insects and meat, dried veggies and fruit. All this stuff already dried, so you don't have to do it. And they also have cling film backgrounds for aquariums and decorations that you can get. And at big box and home stores like Walmart, stuff like that, You can check the kitchen, bathroom, organization, and outdoor garden sections. You can find, again, lots of shelves, baskets, cage decoration stuff. You can also get wall corner guards at home improvement stores. You can use these as silicone on the side of the tank for something to hang things from. You can get shower baskets, other stuff for hanging things like command hooks. You can get a lot of garden decoration that would be safe, and safe plant seeds. So there's a lot you can find at these stores too. Craft stores are another popular place. You can get a lot of nice fake plants. You can get lots of fake plant mats. They often have small shells that are suitable for small crabs. You have to be careful with getting coconut mat here because they can tend to be glued. So, same thing with a lot of other stuff. Make sure you check ingredients. Plastic cross-stitch canvas is really popular for using. And you can also get jute, hemp, and sisal cord or rope for tying things up or making hammocks and stuff like that. Then there's a lot of websites that you can get stuff from, like reptile supply store sites like Josh's Frogs and New England Herpeticulture. You can also go to bird supply sites like Bird Toy Builder or My Safe Bird Store. They have a lot of loose toy parts, which can include some safe woods and some other foraging items and stuff that are actually safe for the hermit crabs too. And of course there's shell store sites like Nepal's Seashell Company and Deltona Seashells, and I've placed orders for both of those before. And of course there's the really big websites where you can find just about anything like Etsy, Amazon, and eBay. Those are very useful for finding specific things if you know what you're looking for. And of course, don't forget the vendor booths that we have here at CrabCon. We have a lot of them that sell different playing items, climbing items, different foraging items. So there is a lot that you can get for your hermit crabs here if you would like to. So all enrichment has potential for hazards, and we can't forget that. So you want to be careful about whatever it is you're going to put in your hermit crab tank and think about what might be an issue. Hazards can vary based on location and specific care style. So if you are in a dry area, you might have to be a little more careful about opening the tank often so you don't lose humidity. If you are busy, have a lot of kids or something, you may not be able to watch your tank as much as you would like, so you might want to be careful with things that need some more supervision or where crabs might risk getting stuck in, so that if you don't have time to check for a couple of days very closely, you don't have a crab get into a bad situation without being able to help them. Animals are very inventive at getting into trouble, even with things that are supposed to be fun. So there's a lot of things that can happen, and just have to try and think of them beforehand, see how they might be able to get into mischief with it. There's also particular hazards that are based on hermit crab care, like molting needs, and because they're invertebrates, they're pretty sensitive to contaminants, so we have to be careful about stuff like that too. With molting considerations, because we have such a deep substrate and we don't change it out, having different substrates or small items that get buried can risk a mold or bacterial blooms underneath the substrate, and that is a huge pain to have to dig out. And small items, especially sharp things, can also risk causing damage to molting crabs if they manage to get into the shell and cause any harm while the crab is soft-bodied. And obviously moving large cage decoration around could collapse molting caves, so you want to be careful about not doing a large amount of decoration changing if you have any hermit crabs that are buried down, just in case they're unable to dig themselves out. And if you have anything you're trying to stick into the substrate, like fake plant stems, you want to be careful about where you put them if you have anybody down, so that you don't accidentally run into them or hurt them. There's also injuries and illnesses that can happen to crabs. Make sure you always double check potential toxicity of plants or food items. I know I've made mistakes before thinking something was safe and it actually wasn't. Use appropriate methods for cleaning your foraged items. So wash, freeze them, bake them. Sometimes you can do all three. Sometimes you may only need to do one thing. So just kind of check on the group and see what the best method is to make sure something's safe. And likewise, be very careful about introducing pests to your tank from foraged or natural materials. I know a lot of people have had issues before with cockroaches or crickets or ants managing into the tank because of hitchhiking on a piece of wood or some wild plants, stuff like that. And you want to be cautious about small openings that might be able to trap the legs. So anything like nets, which are literally made to tangle up animals, so you have to be extra careful with those. And if you have firm structures that have small holes that hermit crabs can get their legs stuck in, it can actually break off sections of their legs or stress them enough that they drop the entire limb, which they can grow it back, but we would like them to not get that stressed, ideally. So just kind of keep an eye out for stuff like that. Continuing on with that, some metal is actually okay. That has been also heavily debated in a lot of groups, but stainless steel and iron are almost definitely okay. There's not really anything in scientific literature to suggest that they would be hazardous. Both of these things are often found in ocean communities, and iron really doesn't pose a hazard to them. So rust isn't really going to be a major issue either. It mostly just looks bad, depending on your opinion. The main things you want to avoid are copper and cheap metal items, because those are more likely to be contaminated with heavy metals or not be the type of metal that they say they are. So this is one where it's really useful to get metal things from bird websites, because birds are also really sensitive to some types of metal. So if there's something marked as stainless steel on a reputable bird site, it is much more likely to be confirmed safe for birds and hermit crabs. So just be careful about what you're buying and where. Remember that exposure to heat and humidity is going to change a lot of things. So there's a lot of things that are going to have a faster breakdown due to the humidity or getting rubbed against sand. There's also things that may have chemicals or toxins in them that aren't an issue usually, but due to the heat and the humidity, they may leach more readily. So double check ingredients, ask questions, make sure you know whether something could potentially be an issue. For food safety, this isn't a huge issue for hermit crabs because they, like I said, they're scavengers. They usually eat dead things, rotting things, but we want to be careful because they're in a more closed environment that they can't get away from, and there's also risk to humans from a lot of this stuff. So make sure you watch fresh and cooked foods for mold. Be cautious about foods getting buried and causing a bacterial bloom or mold underneath the substrate. You want to make sure you cook shellfish to avoid shell rot. That can be hazardous to hermit crabs and needs to be treated. You can also use toothpicks or skewers on meat so that they don't get dragged off and left, hidden, buried, so that they rot. Trust me, smells really bad. and double check your household and consider potential risks. Technically, it is safe to put raw meat in the habitat, but it does pose a risk of introducing salmonella from chicken, stuff like that. So if you have kids, you may not want to do that. And of course, crabs themselves are wrecking balls, and they are very good at destroying things. They can crack and break glass and ceramic with their shells. As you can see, this is one of my dishes that I bought from Mary that my crabs managed to dive bomb and broke my very nice dish. And they're also very prone to pinching and tearing items apart. They like to use their claws, and if they can't pull it apart, they're probably going to try. So make sure you protect quartz and check them frequently for damage, especially if you have lights mounted inside your tank. Watch out for painted items. Those can be chipped and the paint could be ingested. That could very likely have toxins in it. So this is the big thing to watch out for craft stores and dollar stores, because cheaper items can more likely just be painted or may have cheap materials used on them that are easier to ingest and more likely to be hazardous. So, after all those warnings, hopefully this didn't freak you out too much. Try not to stress too much. Make sure you research new ideas, check your ingredients and components of new items, and if you're not sure, ask questions on the group. There should be somebody that can help you or offer some kind of opinion on it. Most of all, have fun. This is supposed to be fun with you and your hermit crabs, and there's a lot that you can do to enjoy them. Here are all of the picture sources that I used for my presentation, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.